She doesn't fall for what you say, she falls for who you are when you're not performing. A lot of men think attraction is about what you show her, your job, your looks, your confidence. But here's the twist. The things that make a woman crave you the most are often things she can't see directly. She feels them. Maybe you've been in this place before. You show up, you're respectful, you're successful, you're doing everything right. And yet, the connection fizzles. You're left wondering what you missed, why the guys who don't seem to try so hard get all the attention. Here's the truth no one talks about. The most magnetic men don't try harder, they just live differently, quietly, consistently. They have a set of unseen habits, habits that bleed into their presence, their energy, their tone, habits that women sense on a subconscious level and can't walk away from. This video is not about tricks, lines, or fake alpha confidence. It's about how you carry yourself when no one's watching and how that builds a force women feel before you even say a word. If you're tired of surface-level dating advice and ready to learn what actually changes how women respond to you without chasing, pretending, or overanalyzing, this is for you. These 5 habits don't make you louder, they make you unavoidable. Let's get into it. Habit 1. She senses it before you speak. You walk into the room. You don't say a word. And yet, she notices. It's not about what you're wearing or how tall you are. It's something else, something quieter, a presence, an energy. This is where most men get it wrong. They think attraction starts with a clever line or a confident hello, but long before you open your mouth, she's already picking up on you, not consciously but instinctively. Let's talk about why. Women are biologically wired to scan for cues of safety, strength, and stability, not in a Hollywood kind of way, but in a deeply subconscious one. And the first cue isn't your car, your salary, or your muscles. It's how you treat your body. Not the abs, not the gym selfies, but the habit of caring for yourself daily. Let me give you a real-world example. Steve is 52, lives in Arizona, divorced 2 years ago, works in tech. He's not flashy, doesn't have a six-pack, but he's consistent. He eats clean, walks daily, lifts 3 times a week, gets 7 hours of sleep, keeps his beard trimmed, and drinks water instead of whiskey. Then he meets Lisa, 47, a nurse with a sharp eye for human behavior. On their second date, she says, "I don't know what it island. You feel grounded." That's the key word, grounded. Steve's not trying to prove anything. His energy doesn't spike and crash. He's not fidgeting, bragging, or performing. He's just there, present, settled in his body. And she feels that before she even fully understands why. See, when you build daily habits around your physical well-being, it bleeds into your posture, your breathing, your tone of voice. And that's what she picks up on. Your nervous system speaks before your lips do. Now let's connect that to attraction. When a woman meets a man who is in control of himself, calm, rested, hydrated, intentional, it's not about being a health nut. It's about being sovereign. It's about the vibe behind the habit. That kind of man isn't grasping for attention. He's not signaling stress or desperation. He doesn't need her to validate him because he's already grounded in his own rhythm. And that's rare. That's magnetic. Now here's the kicker. It's not about perfection. It's about direction. A man who is even trying to take care of himself signals to a woman that he has structure, purpose, and follow-through. That's what builds trust. That's what makes her body respond before her brain catches up. The opposite is also true. A man who ignores his health, who treats his body like an afterthought, sends a different signal. Not just laziness, but emotional drift, numbing, a lack of pride. And women are intuitive. They feel it. Even things like how you breathe, how much tension you carry in your jaw or shoulders, how you sit, all of it speaks. You don't need to fake confidence when your body already radiates balance. The Stoics taught this long before science caught up. Marcus Aurelius wrote, You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That strength begins with mastering the only vessel you fully control, your body. So, what can you do today? Start simple. Respect your sleep. Hydrate. Move daily. Eat like you're building a future, not escaping the present. Groom yourself like someone with dignity, not someone giving up. And don't do it to impress her. Do it to respect yourself. Because the second you do, she feels it, even in silence. If you've been building that quiet strength, let it be known. Drop this in the comments. I show up. And now that your energy's walking in before you do, let's talk about what your body is really saying once you open your mouth. Habit 2. She hears your words, but she believes your body. Every second you're around a woman, you're communicating without even trying. Your posture, your breath, your tension, the way you glance or avoid glancing. It's all a live broadcast of what's going on inside you. And here's the catch. She's fluent in reading it. Even if she doesn't know she island. Let's make this real. You could say all the right things. You could have the perfect voice, the ideal outfit, even the right timing. But if your shoulders are slumped, your eyes dart around, and your voice carries a subtle tremor, none of that matters. Her subconscious already decided something feels off. This isn't about being smooth, it's about being regulated. When your nervous system is settled, when you're breathing evenly, holding eye contact, moving with purpose, you radiate strength. She doesn't think, wow, he seems confident. She feels safe, and that feeling sticks. Now let's flip it. If you're buzzing with anxious energy, rushing your speech, shifting your weight, tapping your fingers, she doesn't register those as minor quirks. Her body reads, this man is unsettled, maybe even unsafe. You're not trying to give that signal, but you are, and the hard truth, you can't fake your state. This is where Stoicism steps in, not as a philosophy you recite, but as a way of being. Seneca said, a mind that is in harmony gives grace to the body. It's not just poetic, it's physical reality. When your inner world is calm, it shows up in how you move, and women track this with animal-level precision. So what do you do with that? First, you stop chasing perfection. You don't need to be a stone-cold alpha. What you need is congruence. Your body and your mind need to match. If you're nervous, breathe slower. If your mind races, ground yourself. If you feel scattered, pause, literally. And don't do it for her. Do it because being aligned feels better. Because living in a body that isn't constantly leaking anxiety is its own reward. Women are drawn to that. Not because it's impressive, but because it's rare. Most men are broadcasting stress signals all day long without realizing it. They walk around like pressure cookers, trying to look confident while their body tells a different story. That gap, that's what kills attraction. But when your signals align, when the way you speak, stand, and breathe all say the same thing, she leans in. Not because of what you said, because of what she felt. She doesn't need a checklist of your qualities. She just needs to feel you're real and regulated. This is why posture, pace, tone, and breath matter more than most men realize. Not because women are analyzing you like a science project, but because their body reads your body. And trust is built on what's felt, not what's said. And here's the deeper truth. When you shift your state, you don't just become more attractive, you become more present. You actually enjoy the moment more. You stop performing and start being. Epictetus put it simply, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That starts with your physical presence. Let your body practice the man you claim to be. So next time you walk into a room, don't focus on what to say. Focus on how you're being, your stillness, your breath, your weight in the ground. That's what she reads. That's what draws her in. If this is something you've already started to feel in your body, if you've started noticing how your presence changes everything, drop this in the comments. I'm aligned. Because when you stop trying to impress with words and start inviting her in through presence, something surprising happens. She starts opening up because now you're asking the kind of questions that hit her deeper than anyone else ever has. And that's exactly what we're covering next. Habit 3. The way you ask that turns her on. Most men think asking questions is just polite small talk. But the way you ask how deep, how slow, how still you stay while listening can trigger a reaction in her that no compliment ever could. Why? Because women aren't turned on by information, they're turned on by attention. Real, undivided, grounded attention. Let's make this tangible. Jason, 44, from Portland, had been on 5 first dates that all ended in the same vague, "You're great, but..." rejection. On his 6th, he decided to try something different. Instead of trying to be interesting, he got deeply interested, not surface-level curious, but quiet and fully present. The woman, her name was Maria, 41, single mom, art teacher, noticed it instantly. Halfway through dinner, she said, "You ask questions like you actually care what I'll say." That moment shifted everything. Because when a man asks a question and then actually listens without jumping in, without trying to fix or outshine her, he becomes different. His calm makes her feel safe to open. His stillness feels like strength. His attention becomes electric. Here's the key. Don't ask just to collect facts. Ask to feel her world. Ask to experience her mind in motion. Instead of, "So what do you do?" try, "What part of your work actually lights you up?" Instead of, "How long have you lived here?" try, "What made you choose this place?" These aren't cheesy pickup lines, they're access points. And when delivered with grounded, patient energy, they create tension, because you're not just curious, you're focused. And that focus feels intimate. It's rare for a woman to feel truly listened to, not just nodded at, but felt. When a man offers that space without judgment, without rushing to respond, he immediately sets himself apart. He's no longer another guy with an opinion. He's the one who makes her feel like a person, not a target. And women remember that. Stoicism teaches this level of presence. It's not passive, it's powerful. As Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Most men live in their heads. But when you're locked into the moment, listening with your whole body, she feels the difference. Jason didn't ask a million questions. He asked fewer, but better. And more importantly, he allowed silence after each one. That silence wasn't awkward. It was charged. It gave Maria room to unfold. And that unfolding, that emotional bloom, is what builds desire. This is why emotional intelligence is seductive. Because when you show you can hold space for her inner world, you're signaling something primal. I can handle you. Not control, not dominate, but hold. And holding space requires restraint, patience, confidence, all Stoic qualities, all deeply attractive. Women are drawn to contrast. A man who's strong but soft-spoken, calm but engaged, masculine but present. That blend doesn't come from lines, it comes from habits. And asking the right kind of questions is one of them. So here's your practice. Slow down your rhythm. Hold eye contact longer than usual. When you ask something, stay still. Don't jump in. Let the silence breathe. Watch what happens. You'll notice the tone of the entire interaction shifts. She softens, she relaxes, she leans in. Not because of your looks, but because of how you make her feel in that moment. If you've ever asked a question that changed the energy of a conversation, if you've seen that spark in her eyes when she realized you were really listening, drop this in the comments. Ask deep. And if you think presence is powerful, wait until you see what happens when you stop explaining yourself and start letting your mystery speak louder than your words. That's where we're going next. Habit 4. How emotional curiosity builds tension. When most men think of attraction, they picture external traits, looks, money, status. But what actually pulls a woman in, what stirs that subtle charge between you, is something far less obvious: emotional curiosity. This is where the game changes. Because most men talk at women. They try to impress, to persuade, to win approval. But a rare kind of man does something entirely different. He leans in emotionally. Not to pry, not to fix, but to feel. Emotional curiosity isn't about being soft. It's about being alert to what moves her. You notice the pause before she answers, the shift in her tone when she talks about her past, the way she lights up when something matters. And instead of brushing past it, you go there, gently, confidently, quietly. This creates a different kind of tension, one rooted not in performance, but presence. When you ask, "What was that like for you?" instead of just, "What happened?" you're showing her that you're not chasing facts. You're chasing feeling. That's rare, and she feels it. This isn't therapy, it's polarity. Because in that moment you're leading with depth, and that depth becomes a mirror for her to reveal more of herself. And the more she reveals, the more she connects, not just to you, but to her own experience. That's the secret. Women are not only drawn to men who understand them, they're drawn to men who help them understand themselves. The Stoics understood that real influence isn't about pushing, it's about drawing out. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When you make her feel something she hadn't slowed down to notice because you noticed it first, your presence becomes unforgettable. But here's what most men miss. They either avoid emotion completely, staying surface level and safe, or they push too hard, turning curiosity into pressure. Real emotional curiosity lives in the middle. It asks gently. It never needs. It simply wants to understand. That desire to understand builds trust, and trust creates vulnerability, and vulnerability is where tension starts to burn. Why? Because now there's risk. Now she's not just talking, she's feeling. And when she feels seen, something unlocks. You move from interesting to irresistible, but you have to be still enough to see it. This isn't about intensity, it's about intimacy, the kind that doesn't ask for more, but creates space for more to show up. Ask questions that move her toward emotion, not logic. Invite her into her own story, and don't rush to solve it. That stillness, that openness, that patience, it says, more than compliments ever could. Here's another layer. When you listen like this, you're not just getting to know her, you're allowing her to know herself. That reflection changes the entire dynamic. She doesn't just enjoy the conversation, she remembers it. Seneca reminded us, it is a rough road that leads to the heights of greatness. Being emotionally curious isn't easy. It means being steady when she's unsure, open when she tests, present when she hides. And Epictetus added, "Nature gave us one tongue and two ears so we could hear twice as much as we speak." Use that, not just to hear, but to feel what's not said. Because when you start responding to what she doesn't say, not just what she does, you build a different kind of heat, not flashy, but magnetic. That's the habit that separates the man she forgets from the one she dreams about. If you're the kind of man who's not afraid to go beyond the surface, drop this in the comments. I go deep. And now let's explore what happens when your mystery does the talking, and why holding back can be the boldest move you make. Habit 5. Boundaries that make her chase. Let's talk about something most men don't realize until it's too late. Boundaries aren't walls that push women away, they're magnets that pull the right ones closer. When you set a boundary with calm confidence, you're doing something few men are willing to do. You're choosing your values over her validation, and that changes everything. Let me give you a real-world scenario. Kevin, 52, lives in Denver, recently divorced, finally back in the dating world. He starts seeing Lisa, 47, a nurse with a warm personality and strong energy. First few dates, chemistry. But then it starts late-night texts, last-minute plan changes, emotional heat-ups followed by cold silences. Kevin feels the old pattern creeping in, the one where he bends to keep the peace. But this time, he does something different. Instead of ghosting or snapping, he sends a calm message. I really enjoy spending time with you, but I need consistency and respect around plans. If that doesn't work for you, I understand, but I won't keep going if that pattern continues. He expected backlash. What he got? Respect. And a shift in her behavior. Because Kevin didn't set a boundary to punish, he set it to protect his peace. That kind of emotional clarity is rare and powerfully attractive. Here's why. When a man has boundaries, a woman feels one thing instantly: safety. Not just physical safety, but emotional safety. She knows she's not dealing with a pushover. She's dealing with a man who knows his worth, and that sends a ripple straight through her nervous system. The tension between desire and structure is where attraction breathes. Women don't chase men who are always available. They chase men whose time means something. Men who aren't pulled by approval but guided by purpose. And boundaries are how you show that. You don't have to explain them, you just have to live them. When you say no and you don't flinch, that's attractive. When you take space not as punishment, but as preservation, that's mysterious. When you call out mixed signals with calm instead of neediness, that's power. The Stoics would nod at this. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." When your boundaries come from self-respect, not ego, they become a quiet force. One that pulls her in, not by pressure, but by gravity. And it's not about playing hard to get. It's about being hard to disturb. Most men go too far in one of two directions. They either fold instantly, trying to keep her happy, or they become rigid, defensive, punishing her for crossing a line she didn't know was there. But boundaries aren't about control, they're about clarity. They say, here's how I live, join me if you want, but I'm not abandoning myself to accommodate you. That's rare, and women feel that difference. The truth is, women test boundaries not to break them, but to feel them. It's how they learn who you really are under pressure. Most men fail those tests by either folding or fighting. You pass when you stand firm without force. Back to Kevin, he didn't lose Lisa. He gained her attention in a deeper way, and if she had walked away, that would have been fine too. Because a man with strong boundaries doesn't fear loss. He respects alignment. And here's the twist. When you have the strength to let her walk, she often stops running. Because deep down, every woman wants to know that the man she desires won't disappear into her moods or his own fear. That kind of grounded energy? It's rare, it's magnetic, and it can't be faked. If you've ever said no and watched her lean in, drop this in the comments. I stand firm. And what happens when you stop seeking and start radiating? That's what we're exploring next. Habit 6. Saying no without saying a word. You don't always need to speak to set a boundary. In fact, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing at all. That silence, that pause, that small moment of deliberate stillness, it carries a message louder than words ever could. Because women don't just listen to what you say, they watch who you are when you don't say anything. Let's break this down. Most men think saying no requires confrontation, a big speech, a defensive energy. But true masculine restraint doesn't need volume, it needs conviction. It lives in your posture, your eyes, the way you don't lean in just to make her comfortable. It's in how you hold your center, even when she's pulling for a reaction. That's the moment she realizes something deeper. This man cannot be moved by pressure, not because he doesn't care, but because he's not controlled by it. When she tests you, shows up late, pushes a line, gets emotional, most men either overreact or over-explain. But the man who just pauses and holds his ground without a word, that's the man who radiates authority. Not arrogance, not coldness, but calm, anchored certainty. It's not the kind of silence that avoids conflict. It's the kind that commands presence. Stoic philosophy revolves around this kind of restraint. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Sometimes, being a man of depth means letting your behavior do the talking. It means trusting your silence more than your defense. Women are deeply intuitive. They feel it when you hesitate. They sense it when you chase. But when you calmly disengage without drama, without flinching, it sends a different signal entirely. It says, "I don't need to control this moment. I only need to control myself." And that's rare. This is especially true in moments of tension. She wants to see what you'll do when things get uncomfortable. Will you collapse into people-pleasing? Will you argue for your worth? Or will you quietly walk away when something doesn't align? The man who says no without saying a word doesn't leave a scene, he leaves a message. It's not silence as a punishment. It's silence as power. The kind of silence that makes her stop and think. The kind that echoes longer than 1,000 explanations. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And sometimes, the most powerful reaction is no reaction. Not because you're indifferent, but because you're in control. This kind of energy doesn't provoke, it attracts. Because now she's leaning in to decode the message. She's not just listening, she's feeling. And what she feels is mystery, strength, and a subtle kind of tension that lingers. It's easy to talk about standards. Much harder to embody them without noise. So the next time you feel the urge to speak, just to explain yourself, just to keep the moment smooth, pause. Ask yourself, am I trying to prove something, or am I willing to be something? That difference is everything. Women are drawn to men who don't need to declare their value. They simply live it, moment by moment, choice by choice, energy by energy. And the moment you stop reacting to pull her back in is often the moment she starts moving closer. If you've ever held your center while the world tried to shake it, drop this in the comments. I stay silent. And now, let's look at what happens when the energy you carry speaks louder than any line you could ever say. Habit 7. The pleasure she feels when you don't need her. There's a quiet power in not needing anyone, and women feel it before you even say a word. Neediness is like static. It disrupts the signal. It clouds your energy, makes you reactive, and instantly shifts the dynamic. But when you move through life already whole, already full, something remarkable happens. Women relax into your presence. Not because you're ignoring them, but because you're not depending on them for emotional oxygen. Let's take a real example. Daniel, 45, a financial advisor in Austin, meets Michelle, 42, at a wine tasting event. She's stunning, smart, and used to men falling all over themselves to win her attention. Daniel's different. He's warm but grounded, friendly but not flirty. They talk, they laugh, but when the conversation ends, he doesn't hover. He doesn't fish for a number. He simply smiles, says it was great to meet her, and turns back to his group. Michelle watches him for the rest of the night. Because here's what's really happening when a man is fully rooted in his own life, his own purpose, and his own peace. His energy says, "You can join me, but I don't need you to." And that creates a very specific kind of desire in women. Need feels heavy. Independence feels light. One pushes, the other pulls. This is why men who are emotionally self-sufficient are so rare and so attractive. The Stoics lived by this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." Women sense when that's true about you. When your sense of joy, direction, and identity isn't hinging on their response, they feel free to respond without pressure. And here's the twist. The less you need her, the more space you create for want. And being wanted without being needed is intoxicating for a woman. Daniel didn't play it cool. He was cool because his value didn't spike from her interest. He didn't try to fill a gap because he wasn't walking around with one. That made every interaction feel like a bonus, not a transaction. Later that week, Michelle messages him first. They meet again, and she keeps leaning in, not because Daniel's chasing, but because he's magnetic. His energy says, "This is who I am, with or without your approval." And that's what keeps her intrigued. This is what most men miss. They try to prove themselves, to earn a place in her life, thinking that's what she wants. But what women truly respond to is the man who doesn't ask to be chosen because he already chose himself. This doesn't mean being distant. It means being grounded, being full. When your life is already rich with purpose, discipline, relationships, and peace, her interest becomes an addition, not a requirement. That's the difference she feels. Women crave the experience of being around a man who is free, not emotionally dependent, not fragile, not always reacting, just steady, present, focused, and full. She doesn't want to be your oxygen. She wants to feel the air shift when you walk in the room. When you become that man, the one who smiles and walks away without needing the outcome, you become unforgettable. If you've ever walked away without needing a reaction and still got her full attention, drop this in the comments. I'm already full. And what happens when that fullness spills into your voice, your eyes, your presence? That's exactly where we're heading next. Habit 8. Why a man with his own joy is dangerous. There's a certain look in a man's eyes when he's at peace with himself, when his happiness isn't borrowed, begged for, or built around anyone else. That look, it's rare, and it's magnetic, because when a man carries his own joy, he becomes dangerous, not in a reckless way, but in a deeply grounded, untouchable way. He's not chasing, he's not performing. He's just radiating something that can't be manipulated. Let's get real here. Most men have been conditioned to look for happiness through results, through women, through approval. And the second she senses that, game over. Why? Because she knows she can control it. The man whose joy depends on her validation is a man she can move like a pawn. But when your joy is self-sourced, when you've cultivated it through your habits, your inner world, your discipline, that's when the entire dynamic flips. She doesn't feel responsible for your mood. She doesn't feel the weight of your happiness on her shoulders. She feels something different, freedom. And that freedom, that's what opens her up. You become the space, not the pressure. You become the invitation, not the demand. Now here's where Stoicism hits deep. Seneca once said, "A man's as miserable as he thinks he island." The Stoics taught that the source of suffering isn't the world, it's how we interpret it. So when a man takes ownership of his inner state, when he builds routines, mindsets, and rituals that generate his own joy, he becomes emotionally bulletproof. And that's dangerous, because you can't be seduced with flattery. You can't be rattled by mood swings. You don't need her to smile for you to feel good. She's not your lifeline. She's not your purpose. She's a possibility. That shift in energy changes everything. You stop acting out of lack. You stop trying to prove something. You start showing up because you want to, not because you need to. And when you want nothing from her, she feels safe to want everything from you. That's the paradox. The men who try the hardest to make women happy rarely do. The men who walk into the room already happy with themselves, they pull attention without even trying, because energy doesn't lie. She feels it in how you speak, how you move, how you can enjoy the moment without angling for her response. Your presence doesn't demand attention, it naturally attracts it. And here's the catch, this kind of joy can't be faked. It's not about acting confident, it's about being internally full. You get that from the gym, from journaling, from building your business, your mission, your values, whatever puts you in alignment with you, not for a result, not for someone else to notice, but because you refuse to abandon yourself for short-term highs. She can sense when a man doesn't need entertainment, praise, or attention to feel alive, and that makes her curious. It makes her wonder what's going on inside you that you're not broadcasting to the world. That curiosity is the gateway to desire. Your joy isn't just an emotion, it's an anchor. When things go wrong, it keeps you grounded. When drama rises, it keeps you calm. When she tests, pulls, pushes, or goes silent, it keeps you from reacting out of fear. That kind of man is dangerous, because nothing outside of him can break him. And that's when a woman starts asking herself a different question, not, does he like me? But, why does this man feel so good to be around without trying? If you've ever built your peace from the inside and let it speak louder than words, drop this in the comments. I carry joy. Because in the next section, we're going into the one thing women respond to even more than confidence. And you might already be doing it without realizing. Habit 9. Depth that makes her stay. A lot of guys can spark attraction. Fewer can keep it. But the rarest, the ones who build the kind of emotional gravity that makes her stay. Not out of obligation, not out of comfort, but because she feels something different around him. She feels pulled in, not pushed away. Let's look at what depth really means in the real world. Michael, 52, divorced for 3 years, recently met Claire, 48, at a mutual friend's dinner party in Denver. What stood out wasn't that Michael told great stories or had perfect posture. It was that when Claire asked him about his life, he didn't dodge, he didn't brag. He wasn't self-deprecating either. He shared real things, his regrets, his reflections, his resilience. Not to impress, but because he didn't fear being known. And that's where emotional depth begins. Most men live on the surface, talk about work, sports, maybe some dating war stories. But they never let a woman feel their emotional texture, their pain, growth, or insights. And because of that, the connection feels flat, forgettable. But when a man can speak from experience, not ego, she leans in. Because here's the truth. Depth is sexy. Not drama, not oversharing, but grounded, reflective masculinity that says, I've lived, I've learned, and I'm still here. Women over 35, especially those who've been through life, divorce, loss, betrayal, rebirth, don't want the polished perfection. They want real. They want a man who's been tested and didn't let it make him bitter. That contrast of strength and softness, control and openness, is what makes you unforgettable. Now, here's where it gets powerful. Michael didn't chase Claire. He didn't flood her with compliments or plans. He gave space for connection to build, but he made sure that when he spoke, it counted, that when he asked questions, he listened, that when she shared, he didn't fix, he just heard her. And it worked. Claire told her friend later that night, there's something about him, like he doesn't need attention, but he gives it in a way that feels real. That's emotional leadership. That's depth. It's not about talking endlessly. It's about presence, intention, honesty. Depth shows up in how you handle disagreement, how you express boundaries, how you reveal parts of yourself without losing your edge. It's how you feel to be around, solid, centered, unshaken but not cold. That rare combination creates emotional security. And emotional security, for a woman, is irresistible. Because when she feels like she can unravel around you and not be judged or smothered, she starts to trust. And with trust comes attachment. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus said, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." A man with depth isn't performing. He's integrated. He knows what matters and doesn't sell himself for temporary attention. He knows what to say, and more importantly, when not to say it. And when a woman feels that she stays, not because she's afraid to lose you, but because she finally feels safe being herself. Depth doesn't just get attention, it keeps it. It doesn't rush connection, it invites it to grow, slowly, deeply, and with intention. If you've ever had a woman look at you differently, not because of what you said, but how you made her feel, drop this in the comments. I bring depth. And in the next part, we'll close out with the most subtle yet powerful shift that makes her crave you long after the moment ends. Habit 10. The reflection that makes her crave more. There's a point in every powerful interaction when she stops reacting to you and starts reacting to how you make her feel about herself. That's the secret. It's not just about being confident or mysterious or composed. It's about being the kind of man who reflects something back to her, something she wants to see, something rare, something beautiful, even if she can't fully explain it. When she walks away from you feeling more alive, more feminine, more seen, that's when the craving starts. And the best part, you're not doing it by giving compliments or laying it on thick. You're doing it by being a mirror of emotional clarity, intention, and presence. Let's break that down. When a man is truly present, he doesn't just hear her words, he reads the space between them. He notices her tone shift, her subtle hesitations, the flicker in her eye when something touches a nerve. He doesn't jump in to fix or flatter. He simply allows her to be fully experienced. And in doing so, she experiences herself more deeply around him. That kind of presence rewires the way she sees you. It's no longer about how tall you are, how witty you sound, or how much you earn. It's about how she feels in your energy. Calm, curious, connected, and slightly off balance in the best way possible. Why? Because most men are too consumed with proving, too busy thinking about what to say next, too addicted to performance. But the man who reflects instead of reacts, he creates space, emotional space. And in that space, she finds parts of herself she forgot were there. This is why women become addicted to that energy. It's not about validation, it's about expansion. She doesn't crave you because you're perfect. She craves how she feels when she's around you. And this is where the Stoics come in again. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When your inner world is calm, composed, and clear, you don't just think differently. You affect everything and everyone around you. You become a silent influence, a felt presence. And that, more than charm or good looks, is what makes you unforgettable. Because here's the truth she'll never admit out loud. She wants to feel herself through you. She wants to feel soft where she usually has to be strong. She wants to feel playful where she's normally serious. She wants to feel deeply feminine in the presence of deeply grounded masculine energy. And when she does, she remembers it. Days later, weeks later, sometimes longer. Because those reflections don't fade like compliments do. They don't flatter, they transform. Here's where this habit becomes your edge. You're not seeking her approval. You're not trying to spark a reaction. You're simply so rooted in your own energy that you become the emotional canvas for her to see herself more clearly. And the more clearly she sees herself with you, the more she wants to be around that version of herself. That's what she chases. That's what sticks. That's what turns interest into something deeper. She craves the man who reminds her who she is at her best, not with words, but with presence. And once she's had that experience, no one else quite compares. This is what makes you truly irresistible. Not noise, not tactics, but depth, restraint, joy, and the kind of calm reflection that lets her become more herself around you. And the man who gives her that is the one she keeps coming back to. You've just learned 10 powerful habits that most men never even think about, yet they're exactly what separates the forgettable from the irresistible. These aren't tricks, they're not lines or pickup tactics. They're reflections of something deeper, emotional clarity, grounded masculinity, and the quiet strength that women don't just notice, they remember. Because when you shift your energy, your presence, your way of listening and being, everything changes. She doesn't just see you, she feels you. So if something in this resonated with you, you're already on the right path. Keep walking it. And if you want more, you know what to do. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.